Apple's founder, Steve Jobs, was a brilliant leader. But is it possible that the lessons he learned in 50 years of his life can be learned by you in just 15 minutes? Well, the answer is yes, it is possible. Steve Jobs gave a speech at Stanford University where he shared the biggest lessons of his life in just 15 minutes through 3 stories. In that speech, he shared many things, and every single one of them was remarkable. Today, all the words are Steve Jobs. I'm not adding my words. I'm simply bringing his words to you in an easy-to-understand way. So, free your mind from all worries and external thoughts. Today, you are about to hear something that can bring an explosive transformation in your life. After listening to this speech, you will be deeply moved. So, without further delay, let's begin. Thank you. It is an honor for me to be with all of you at the commencement ceremony of one of the finest universities in the world. I want to tell you the truth. I never graduated from any college, and today is the closest I have ever been to a college graduation ceremony. Today, I will share 3 stories from my life. Not too many, just 3. The first story, connecting the dots. After enrolling at Reed College, I dropped out within 6 months. However, I stayed around the campus for another 18 months before officially leaving. So, the question arises, why did I drop out of college? Well, it started even before I was born. My biological mother was a young, unmarried graduate student who wanted someone to adopt me. However, she had one condition: the adoptive parents must be college graduates. Everything was already set. I was supposed to be adopted by a lawyer and his wife. But at the last moment, after I was born, they changed their minds because they wanted a baby girl. So, in the middle of the night, my future parents, who were on the waiting list, received a call. We have a baby boy. Would you like to adopt him? They immediately said yes. But later, when my biological mother found out that my adoptive parents were not college graduates, in fact, my father hadn't even completed high school, she refused to sign the final adoption papers. She only agreed after a few months, when my adoptive parents promised that they would send me to college. And this is how my life began. 17 years later, I went to college. But by mistake, I chose a very expensive college, one as costly as Stanford. My working-class parents spent all their savings on my education. But after 6 months, I realized that my studies had no real value in my life. I had no idea what I wanted to do in life. I had no idea how college was going to help me figure it out. And yet, I was spending all of my parents' lifelong savings on it. So, I decided to drop out of college. I believe that whatever happens, happens for the best. At that time, it was a terrifying decision. But looking back today, it was the best decision of my life. Let me tell you why. As soon as I dropped out, I stopped attending the classes that didn't interest me. Instead, I focused only on the classes that truly fascinated me. Of course, this was not an easy thing to do. I had no dorm room, so I slept on the floor of my friends' rooms. I collected empty Coke bottles and returned them for money to buy food. Every Sunday, I walked 7 miles to the Hare Krishna temple just so I could get one proper meal a week. And I loved it. Now, let me tell you why dropping out was the best decision of my life. At that time, Reed College was the best place in the country to learn calligraphy. Every poster, every label across the entire campus was beautifully hand calligraphed. Since I had dropped out, I didn't have to take normal classes. So, I decided to take calligraphy classes and learn it properly. I learned about serif and sans serif typefaces. I learned how to adjust the spacing between letters. I learned what makes great typography truly great. It was beautiful, artistic, and historical, so subtle that science alone couldn't capture its essence. I found it fascinating. At the time, I had no idea how this would ever be useful in my life. But 10 years later, when we were designing the first Macintosh computer, I used everything I had learned from those calligraphy classes. The Mac became the first computer in the world with beautiful typography. If I had never taken that calligraphy course, the Mac would never have had multiple typefaces or proportionally spaced fonts. And since Windows copied Mac, it's likely that no personal computer today would have them either. Back then, it was impossible to connect the dots looking forward, but 10 years later, looking back, it all made sense. You can only connect the dots by looking back. So, you must believe that everything happening now will somehow connect to your future. You have to trust something, your gut, destiny, life, karma, anything. Because believing that the dots will connect will give you the confidence to follow your heart, even when it leads you off the well-worn path. And that will make all the difference. The biggest lesson from my first story: whatever is happening for a reason. Everything you are doing right now will help you in some way in the future. So, just trust yourself and keep doing what you love. My second story: love and loss. I was very fortunate to find what I loved to do at an early age. And I started Apple in my father's garage when I was just 20 years old. We worked tirelessly, and in 10 years, Apple grew from a 2-person startup into a $2 billion company with 4,000 employees. A year earlier, we had just launched the Macintosh, and I had turned 30. And then, I got fired. You might be wondering, how can someone be fired from a company they built? Well, as Apple grew, we hired a talented person whom I thought would help me run the company. For the first year, everything went smoothly. But soon, we had differences regarding the company's future vision. This led to a conflict, which escalated to the board of directors, and they sided with him. So, at 30 years old, I was fired from the very company I had created. The focus of my entire adult life was suddenly gone. It was devastating. For the next few months, I had no idea what to do. I felt like a huge public failure. At one point, I even thought about leaving Silicon Valley. But slowly, I realized something. I still loved what I did. Even though Apple had rejected me, my passion for my work had not faded. So, I decided to start over. At the time, I couldn't see it, but getting fired from Apple was the best thing that could have happened to me. The burden of being successful was replaced by the lightness of being a beginner again. I felt free, and that freedom led me to one of the most creative periods of my life. In the next 5 years, I started 2 new companies, Next and Pixar. During this time, I also met an amazing woman who later became my wife. Pixar created the world's first computer-animated movie, Toy Story. Today, Pixar is the most successful animation studio in the world. Meanwhile, Apple made an unexpected decision. It bought Next. I was back at Apple, and the technology we developed at Next became the foundation of Apple's future innovations. Looking back, I can confidently say, if I hadn't been fired from Apple, none of this would have happened. It was a bitter pill to swallow, but I believe the patient needed it. The biggest lesson from my second story: sometimes life hits you hard, but never lose faith. The only way to be truly satisfied in life is to do what you believe is great work. And the only way to do great work is to love what you do. If you haven't found it yet, keep looking. Don't settle. Like any meaningful relationship, you'll know when you find it. And just like a great relationship, it will only get better over time. So, keep searching. Don't stop. My third story, death. When I was 17 years old, I read a quote, "If you live each day as if it were your last, someday you'll most certainly be right." That quote left a deep impression on me. Since then, for the past 33 years, I have looked in a mirror every morning and asked myself, if today were the last day of my life, would I want to do what I am about to do today? And whenever the answer has been no for too many days in a row, I know I need to change something. Remembering that I will die soon is the most powerful tool I've ever encountered to help me make big decisions in life. Because almost everything, all external expectations, all pride, all fear of embarrassment or failure, just falls away in the face of death, leaving only what is truly important. Remembering that you are going to die is the best way to avoid the trap of thinking you have something to lose. You are already naked. There is no reason not to follow your heart. About a year ago, I was diagnosed with cancer. At 7:30 a.m., I had a scan, and it clearly showed a tumor in my pancreas. To be honest, I didn't even know what a pancreas was. The doctors told me, with almost complete certainty, that I had a type of cancer that was incurable, and that I had only 3 to 6 months to live. The doctors advised me to go home and get my affairs in order. In doctors' language, that means prepare to die. It means trying to say your goodbyes, trying to tell your kids everything you thought you had 10 years to say in just a few months. It means trying to make peace with everything. I spent the whole day with that diagnosis in my mind. Later that evening, I had a biopsy where a doctor inserted an endoscope down my throat, through my stomach, and into my pancreas to take a few cells from the tumor. I was completely unconscious during the procedure, but my wife, who was present, told me that when the doctors saw my cells under a microscope, they started crying. Because it turned out I had a very rare form of pancreatic cancer that was curable with surgery. I had the surgery, and fortunately, I am alive today. This was the closest I had ever been to death, and I hope it remains that way for a few more decades. Having faced death, I can now say with absolute certainty, death is a useful but purely intellectual concept, the ultimate truth about life and death. No one wants to die. Even people who want to go to heaven don't want to die to get there. And yet, death is the destination we all share. No one has ever escaped it. And that's how it should be, because death is the single best invention of life. It is life's change agent. It clears out the old to make way for the new. Right now, you are the new, but someday, not too long from now, you will gradually become the old and be cleared away. Sorry for being so dramatic, but it is the truth. Your time is limited, so don't waste it living someone else's life. Don't let the noise of others' opinions drown out your own inner voice. And, most importantly, have the courage to follow your heart and intuition. They somehow already know what you truly want to become. Everything else is secondary. And finally, I have one last wish for you all. Stay hungry. Stay foolish. I have always wished this for myself. And now, as you graduate and move forward in life, I wish this for you. Stay hungry. Stay foolish. Stay hungry. Always have the hunger to learn, grow, and achieve more. Stay foolish, because only a fool is willing to learn new things. The moment you think you know everything, you stop growing. So, stay hungry, stay foolish. Thank you all very much. I hope this legendary speech has inspired you. If it did, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more motivational and life-changing content. If I made any mistakes while presenting it, please forgive me.